As Clemson football season wraps up, Clemson basketball is into full gear here, and Clemson has earned their two best wins, two really strong victories just in the last week. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about this team, where they stand. So, of course, those two recent wins were in the Sunshine Slam in Daytona Beach, Florida, where they beat San Francisco, a top 60 team, number 59 in KenPom, and then they beat Penn State, who as of this recording is 37. Both were really competitive games, and the color commentators made this, they said this as well. These looked like tournament games, the way they were battling. Penn State especially. Clemson appeared to be the better team. They led most of the game, but Penn State would go on runs, briefly take a lead, and then Clemson would always respond. And so very entertaining games and very encouraging games. And I'll talk a little bit more about them, but to zoom out and discuss the resume a little bit more, Clemson is 6-1. They picked up 4 wins against lower level competition, so no letdowns is really what you're looking for there. Beat Charleston Southern, St. Francis, PA, Eastern Kentucky, which was briefly a little bit dicey, but they had a strong finish there, and Radford. They lost at Boise State. That one's a road game. I think Boise State is good. San Francisco actually beat them, so I think the difference in that game may be home versus road. But also, against Boise State, Clemson, they lost the rebounding battle, and they were often the ones kind of on their heels as the Boise State played excellent defense. And then in these last 2 wins against San Francisco and Penn State, Clemson was the aggressor. Clemson was suffocating them with their defense. Clemson's got a great group of guards, a lot of depth in that guard group now. Dillon Hunter has really improved a ton, and Dell Jones, as a true freshman, has come in ready to contribute. That gives them a ton of depth for that position. So they really, not necessarily press like Oliver Purnell style press, but they are aggressive, pushing outside the three-point line all over them, liberally subbing in their different guards to keep them fresh. And that really takes the opposing offenses off their game. So that has been a really positive development. So let me add this back. Sorry, Dillon Hunter's numbers are cut a little bit there at the bottom, but what I think is the biggest development that we've seen over these last 2 games is the emergence of Ian Schieffelin really taking kind of almost a PJ Hall level role. And so I wasn't sure coming into the year that he could fill that. So the first couple games, he took 6, 11, 10, 7, and 8 field goal attempts in each game. And he was a good, solid player, but he looked a lot like the guy we saw last year, right? So he wasn't, he was a little bit better, but wasn't elevating his role, his usage. But in these last 2 games, he's got tied a season high for points in each of them, getting 18, which was the season high against San Francisco, and then he matched it against Penn State. He's tied a season high in rebounds, getting 13 in both of those games. And the crazy thing is he had 5 assists against San Francisco and then 8 assists against Penn State. He's Clemson's leader in assists. If you look at this, he's averaging 4 assists per game as a power forward. That is insane. His court vision is incredible. His decision-making is just so good. And remember, he could come back, right? So Ian Schieffelin's been a guy, he is a senior, so he's now blossoming into he doesn't have that COVID year, so he's really blossoming into that sort of final form here, and it's a star player, right? 13.6 points a game, 11 rebounds, and to add 4 assists to that really changes the offense. Then Hunter is your go-to attack the basket type scorer. So between those are your 2 stars. And the thing with Hunter is, and I said this in the season preview, where he had to get better was his 3-point shooting. He was a bad 3-point shooter last year. This year he is shooting a unrealistic or unsustainable 48.6%. He won't shoot that by the end of the year for sure, but it's a huge step up, even if he regresses from where he was last year, which was only 31.1%. You need him to be above, say, 33. You kind of want him around 35 perhaps. And he's doing that. He's been aggressive shooting the 3. He's confident in it, and it makes a huge difference. Victor Locken is the center, 6'11" center they brought in from Cincinnati, of Russian descent, or played in Russia. Don't just say that from his heritage. But he's been really solid too. And what has really come on lately is the chemistry with Schieffelin. Now, he doesn't have a ton of assists, but I think the passing and the boxing out and the way he's playing on the court at the same time with Schieffelin, adds a lot of synergy. And that's, I think, what's helped Schieffelin elevate his game recently. As they've gotten comfortable with each other, they've gotten a lot better. Wiggins is a little bit inconsistent. I'd love to see more rebounding from him at 6'10", but he plays a little bit more like a guard. But when he's knocking down shots, he's got tons of potential. I think he's still a solid. If he's your fourth scorer, I think you're in a good spot. And then Jaden Zachary, honestly expected more scoring from him, but him and Dillon Hunter both, their defense is just so excellent. And Zachary's a great passer. So both of them have been good. And Dillon Hunter is kind of that X factor off the bench. In my opinion, the best guy off the bench in general. Both as a scorer and as a great defensive player. He's someone that I would say is probably the most improved player on the team from last year. And it has really helped this team. What's so interesting is that, Miles Foster was brought in from Illinois State, and you had Jake Heidbreder, who they brought in from Air Force and then redshirted last year. You figured those would be the two top guys off the bench. I originally was starting to fill them in this chart, but Hunter was ahead of them in points, and frankly has leapfrogged them in some regard in the rotation. So really, he's kind of the top guy off the bench at this point, and I think that's really helped Clemson in terms of depth, defense. He's really been key. The other guy, which was not shown on that chart, was Del Jones, true freshman. Clemson doesn't have a lot of true freshmen on the basketball team that come in and really make a huge impact. And Del Jones is doing that. He reminds me a lot of Rod Hall. Still not a great three-point shooter. He's at 31.3%. So kind of that mark that I was saying Chase Hunter was at last year, and it really needed to improve. That's where he is as a true freshman, right? So again, calibrate. He's only a true freshman. He's averaging 5.6 points in 15 minutes per game. Certainly not bad. Also 1.3 assists. And he just attacks the basket. So when you have him, you have Zachary, you have Hunter, and you have a great post duo. This is a team that can really attack the basket and attack it well. And then on top of that, they're shooting, again, unsustainable, 40.1% from three, the 20th best nationally. That'll settle down a little bit. But after losing Joe Girard, you had to be concerned that this team wouldn't have enough three-point shooting. They surely do. And so that's really encouraging. So you look at what's up next. They have what should be a fairly easy game against Florida A&M, one of the lower-ranked teams in KenPom. And then a very, very tough home game, super late starts, like 9:30 in Little John Coliseum this coming Tuesday against Kentucky. Even if they split those, I think you're still feeling pretty good about where they're at. 2 quality wins. And even if they lose to Kentucky, it'd be 2 losses that are pretty acceptable, not really blemishes like they had 2 years ago when they had lost to Loyola Chicago in non-conference play. And then the weird one little ACC game that they sneak in before the end of conference play, that's next Saturday. So that's the Saturday of the ACC championship. Clemson goes to Miami, a solid Miami team. So you're looking at this, if they can go 2-1 in this stretch, you're feeling really good. I think a lot of people were concerned, and rightfully so, about consistency. Great year last year, but was it a fluke? A lot of times basketball success feels a little bit like a fluke, and that's fair. But you look at 2018, they made the tournament, made a Sweet 16 run. 2021, they made the tournament. 2024, they made the tournament and made an Elite 8 run. This looks like a tournament team. That would be 4 out of 8 years in the tournament, with at least 2 of those years having multiple wins. They could do that again this year. We're starting to see some consistency like we haven't seen, I hesitate to say ever, but I think ever. And so I think this is a huge year. Would be the second time in school history Clemson made the tournament or won tournament games in back-to-back years. They won tournament games in 89 and 90. That was the only time they've ever advanced out of that first round in consecutive years. Good shot they do that this year. I think this is a good team. I think it's a tournament team. Keep expectations realistic, obviously. I don't think expecting a Final Four or another Elite 8 run, but this is a good team that is more than worth your time. So, after this Palmetto Bowl, dive right into Clemson basketball because they're not disappointing.